They call him the advisor. No one knows his real title. He doesn't appear on any organizational charts, but everyone, especially the executives, listens when he speaks. He's not officially part of the company, but somehow he's everywhere. If you ask around, the answers are always vague. Oh, he advises the CEO. Just an advisor. Nothing official. But no one dares to say his name too loudly. I noticed this after 2 months of working here. In meetings, the CEO will stop mid-sentence, glance down at his phone, read a text message, and immediately change his mind. Everyone knows what that means. The advisor has spoken. He's built an empire from whispers. I joined Varen Technologies as a financial analyst, one of those quiet jobs that involve spreadsheets and silence. But silence teaches you to notice things others miss. Like the way the CEO smiled differently when the advisor walked in. Or the way the HR director used to laugh hysterically when his name popped up on the call screen. He was older, gray suit, soft voice, sharp eyes that seemed to assess people as if calculating profit margins. He didn't need to raise his voice. A single question from him, "Are we sure these numbers are correct?" could wipe out months of work. People feared his questions more than the CEO's orders. The first time I met him was at a board meeting. He wasn't on the agenda. He wasn't even supposed to be there. But halfway through, he walked in, without knocking, without announcing himself. The room changed, everyone stood up, the jokes died down mid-sentence. Even the CEO stood up. He sat down next to the finance manager, opened the file, and whispered. I reviewed the forecasts. They're too optimistic. That was it. Those 3 words evaporated the entire marketing budget the next morning. I remember thinking, what kind of person can kill an entire department with a whisper? There's a strange kind of loyalty born of fear. The higher you go up the corporate ladder, the more people say his name like a prayer. The lower you go, the less you believe he exists. But the numbers don't lie, and they started to change after his visits. Budgets were shrinking, departments were closing, but quarterly profits somehow remained steady. Every time something went wrong, the advisor would appear shortly afterward, offering advice. It was elegant destruction, disguised as strategy. One Friday night, I stayed late finishing a report. Most of the floor lamps were off, save for the hum of computers and the sounds of the city filtering through the glass windows. Just then, I heard 2 voices from the conference room down the hall. The CEO and him. You'll transfer the money quietly, the advisor said. The CEO's reply was weak. What about the audit? It's taken care of. A brief silence. Then the sound of chairs scraping, papers sliding across the desk. I was stunned. One word, money, remained in my mind like a bug in a perfectly executed program. When they left, I waited before entering. The air still smelled of their perfume and espresso. On the desk was a folder labeled Private Consultation. Inside, half the page was blank, but one line caught my eye. Account, ST-G27. Transfer, 2 million. No client name. No signature. Just a date, yesterday. I slowly closed the folder, pressed it down, and put it back where I'd found it. They say curiosity kills careers faster than mistakes. Maybe they're right. But I couldn't help but see that number. The next morning, I checked the financial records. That transaction didn't exist. Not in the books, not in the archives. Yet the balance sheet was missing one perfectly matching item, $2 million. When I quietly mentioned this to my supervisor, he looked at me for a long moment and said, "Don't look for things you're not supposed to find, Ethan." That was the moment I knew, whatever this was, it was deeper than a single transition. Days turned into weeks. With each visit by the mentor, someone got promoted, someone got fired, and a strategic reallocation appeared on the balance sheet. But no one questioned him. He didn't question the man whispering in the CEO's ear, because if he did, he would disappear. I once asked a senior accountant what had happened to Daniel, the auditor who had sat across from me. He said, "Daniel resigned." I checked. Daniel's resignation was signed the same week he submitted a report titled Indicators of Fraudulent Accounts. The next morning, I arrived at the office before sunrise. The city still slept under its silver fog, but my mind was racing through columns, transactions, and missing decimals. $2 million. Gone. No record. No trace. No invoice. Just an empty space on a line that used to exist. I knew better than to ask questions in public. The walls here had ears, and those ears wore suits. I started quietly. Pulled archived ledgers from the previous quarter, cross-referenced with project budgets, invoices, and vendor lists. Every legitimate transfer had its twin, a signature, an ID, a timestamp. Except one. Transaction 07, STG27. It appeared once in the temporary cache of our accounting software, then vanished before it hit the official database. Whoever did it had admin clearance. And that meant only 4 people could have pulled it off. The CFO, the head of IT, the CEO, or the mentor. At 9 a.m., I walked into the finance office pretending to need a printer. The CFO, Morgan, was there. Sharp suit, colder smile. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I replied, pretending to fumble with the toner. On his desk, I noticed a folder stamped with the same code, STG27. My throat tightened. He closed it the moment he saw me looking. "Need something, Vale?" I smiled. "Just paper." That's the thing about predators. They can smell curiosity. Back at my desk, I decided to test something. I sent an innocuous email to the finance group. "Does anyone know why the internal transfer log skipped entry 27? Minutes later, the email vanished from my sent folder. Deleted remotely. Someone was watching my activity in real time. I didn't panic. Instead, I set a digital trap, a duplicate email containing a hidden tracking pixel. When it was opened, I'd know where and by whom. Then I waited. Hours passed. The tracker pinged. Open from a device labeled ARL, Admin 1. Author Langford. The mentor. He'd read my email. He knew I was looking. That evening, I stayed late again, replaying the log traces. Every time the system auto-purged something, a new advisory memo appeared from the mentor's consulting account. Always the same pattern: loss, concealment, justification. He wasn't just stealing money. He was laundering the company's conscience. At 10:46 p.m., as I cross-referenced another file, my screen blinked, access denied. Then, a message box appeared. "Stop digging, Ethan." No sender. No address. Just that one line. I stared at it, fingers frozen over the keyboard. It wasn't a threat. It was a verdict. I unplugged my workstation immediately and transferred my files to a private drive, encrypted, offline, untraceable. The kind of move that gets you fired if anyone finds out. Then I walked out. The office at night looked different. Colder, emptier, as if the walls were waiting to see what I'd do next. The city lights flickered across the glass like warning signals. In the reflection, I saw myself, tired eyes, loosened tie, a man too deep in numbers to realize he'd become one. The next morning, my building pass didn't work. Security said my clearance was under review. Morgan, the CFO, walked past me, whispering into his phone. When he saw me, he smiled faintly and said, "IT glitch." "Don't worry." His tone said otherwise. I waited until he disappeared, then slipped into the server room using a borrowed badge from a junior tech who owed me a favor. Inside, the air was freezing, sterile, humming, alive with secrets. I connected my encrypted drive and pulled what was left of the transaction logs. Half the files were gone. The rest were overwritten with meaningless data. But one folder remained intact. It was labeled simply, Consultant Access Records. And buried inside, timestamps, remote IP addresses, and authorization codes that all traced back to one external account. Arthur.Langford at Mentor Strategies, CO. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The same man who advised our CEO had been using his private consulting firm to siphon internal funds. He didn't just manipulate decisions. He owned the mechanism that approved them. And the CEO either didn't know or didn't care. Suddenly, a shadow moved behind the glass door. I turned. Morgan, the CFO, stood there. No smile this time. "Late night again?" he asked. "I'm just clearing old data." He stepped closer. You know, curiosity isn't part of your job description." I didn't reply. He looked down at my plugged-in drive. Backup. Personal copy. Of what? I met his eyes. Numbers. A long silence. Then he leaned in slightly and whispered, "If you like your career, you'll stop before you find out what 2 million can buy." Then he left. I unplugged everything, heart pounding, and stared at the dark screen. The warning wasn't just about the money. It was about control. The mentor wasn't stealing from the company. He was buying the people inside it. That night, as I walked to my car, my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "You're asking the wrong questions, Ethan. Try looking at who approved the audit instead." No signature. But I already knew who it was from. The mentor didn't need to threaten me. He was inviting me to dig deeper, just to see how far I'd go. In the cold blue reflection of my car window, I whispered to myself, "If he wants me to stop, it means I'm close." And I knew, the next thing to disappear wouldn't be the money. It would be me. I didn't sleep that night. The message kept replaying in my head. Try looking at who approved the audit instead. Who approved the audit? Not who did it. That one word changed everything. By dawn, I was back at my desk. My badge had been reactivated. Someone must have lifted the restriction overnight. Maybe an IT correction. Maybe a warning. Either way, the game was back on. I opened the audit logs from last quarter. They were locked under CFO credentials, but I'd already mirrored a copy weeks ago. I scanned line after line until I found it. Negative 1,945 Australian dollars. Internal verification approved by A. Langford. Author Langford, the mentor. He wasn't just advising the audit. He was signing off on it. That explained everything. The missing funds, the false reports, the selective losses. He wasn't covering his tracks. He was the tracks. But then something strange happened. As I stared at the screen, the entry blinked once, then vanished. Deleted. In real time. My mirrored backup, too. Every version, every copy, gone in front of my eyes. Like the system was erasing history while I watched. I opened my inbox. The last email I'd sent, the one to myself with the audit link, was missing too. Search returned nothing. Trash empty. Server cache blank. Someone had scrubbed the record entirely. And then I noticed it. The cursor in my inbox was moving on its own. Letters appeared slowly, one by one, as if typed by invisible hands. "You're trespassing." The cursor stopped blinking. A chill ran down my spine. They were inside my account, watching me in real time. I disconnected from the company Wi-Fi, switched to my phone's hotspot, and copied my local logs before they could vanish too. Halfway through, the screen went black. Remote shutdown initiated. I yanked the power cable, heart hammering. When the screen came back, a single message appeared on a blank background. Last warning. That afternoon, a quiet tension hung over the office. No one met my eyes. People whispered near the coffee machine and stopped when I passed. At lunch, I found out why. Daniel, the internal auditor who'd filed fraudulent account indicators months ago, was gone. Officially transferred to another branch in Singapore. Unofficially, his apartment had been cleared out overnight. No forwarding address. No call. No goodbye. It wasn't a transfer. It was a cleanup. Back in my cubicle, I checked my private logs. Daniel's final report had been deleted from the shared drive, but my offline cache still held fragments, line numbers, timestamp markers, and one attached file name that hadn't been purged. Client_transfer_stg27.pdf. The same code. The missing 2 million. He'd found it before me. And that's why he vanished. By 6 p.m., the office started to empty. I stayed behind, lights dim, the hum of servers echoing like distant breathing. I rebuilt Daniel's deleted file using recovered fragments, line by line, checksum by checksum. It took hours. When the reconstruction hit 87%, a small preview window opened automatically. The document header read, "Confidential. External funds redistribution approval." Underneath, 3 signatures. Author Langford. Morgan Reyes. CEO Adrian Clark. 3 men. 3 signatures. 1 crime. I froze. The evidence was right there, enough to destroy all of them. Then the file flickered and closed itself. A new window appeared. System access override. Someone was remotely in my machine again. The file deleted. The fragments wiped. Gone. My screen went dark. And then, a sound behind me. Soft footsteps. Slow. Controlled. I turned. Morgan, the CFO, stood at my cubicle entrance, holding a phone. No emotion in his face. Just calculation. "Working late again?" he asked. "Just catching up," I said, trying to sound normal. He stepped closer, eyes flicking to my monitor. "Funny thing, Ethan. The system says you've been accessing restricted archives. I didn't authorize that. I was just reconciling old logs." He smiled faintly. "You know, the last guy who did that, Daniel, he's in Singapore now." A pause. Then, almost kindly, "Maybe you should take a vacation too." He left before I could answer. When the door shut, I realized my hands were shaking. I checked my pocket. The encrypted USB drive was still there. It had everything: screenshots, cache fragments, network traces. Enough to prove something was wrong. Not enough to survive it. At home, I locked the door, drew the blinds, and backed up everything again. Then I opened a private email draft, addressed to a journalist I knew from college, one who specialized in financial crime. Subject: Need to talk. Urgent. I attached one of the surviving files and pressed save. Not send, just save. Then I closed the laptop. The next morning, I logged in to send it. But the draft folder was empty. Not deleted, gone. The journalist's contact file had vanished too, as if she'd never existed in my address book. And on my desk, beneath my keyboard, someone had left a small folded note. I unfolded it slowly. 1 line. Handwritten. Precise. "You're not the only one who knows." No signature. No trace. But I could smell the cologne. The same one from that night in the boardroom. Author Langford. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't just about stealing money. It was about rewriting truth itself. The mentor didn't delete evidence. He deleted memory. He called me into his office at exactly 7:03 p.m. Not the CEO. Not Morgan. Him. Author Langford. The man whose name had haunted every missing file, every erased line, every warning. His message was simple. Come to level 41. Alone. The 41st floor wasn't on the public elevator panel. It was where the old legal department used to be, sealed off after a fire 5 years ago. I should have ignored it. Instead, I went. The elevator hummed up in silence. My reflection in the steel walls looked like someone else, someone already erased. When the doors opened, the floor was dark except for one lit office at the end of the corridor. The door was open. Inside, Langford sat behind a minimalist desk, city lights painting lines of cold gold across the glass behind him. No papers, no clutter, just a single fountain pen and a small crystal of whiskey in his hand. "Mr. Vale," he said, "please sit." His voice was calm, gentle, even. The kind of voice you trust right before it cuts your throat. "I hear you've been curious," he said, swirling the drink. "I prefer thorough," I replied. A faint smile. Good word. Thorough. Dangerous habit, though, in a company like this. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. His eyes didn't blink much. "You found something, didn't you?" I didn't answer. "That's fine," he continued. "Curiosity is natural. You see a missing number. You want to know why it's missing. That's the accountant's curse." He stood, walked slowly to the window. The city stretched below, lights like veins pulsing through darkness. "Tell me, Ethan, do you think this company runs on integrity?" "I think it runs on illusion," I said. He laughed softly. "Then you're smarter than most." He turned, his reflection slicing across the glass. "Let me tell you a secret. Numbers don't build companies. Stories do. Stories about growth, about innovation, about trust. But stories need to be managed. He set his glass down. That's where I come in. I manage the narrative. I remove the noise that frightens shareholders. If a few decimals disappear in the process, well. He paused, looking directly at me. That's just maintenance. I held his gaze. You're laundering money. He smiled wider. Laundering? No. I'm balancing. Moving excess from hands that waste it to hands that use it better. And who decides that? I asked. He poured another drink. The ones who understand the system. He offered me the glass. I didn't take it. He shrugged. You're young, Ethan. Sharp. You could have a future here, if you stop looking for truths no one pays you to find. The room went quiet again. The hum of the city below, the faint ticking of an antique clock somewhere in the shadows. I know about the missing 2 million, I said finally. Langford nodded, unbothered. Of course you do. And you think that makes you special. It doesn't. You're not the first to find it. Daniel found it too. Ah. He exhaled, as if remembering a pleasant memory. Daniel was talented, but emotional. He thought exposing corruption would make him a hero. He turned back to me, eyes like steel behind glass. Tell me, Ethan, do you know what happens to heroes? They disappear, I said quietly. He smiled again. Good. You're learning. He circled the desk slowly, until he stood right behind me. You see, I don't destroy people, Mr. Vale. I give them choices. Daniel made his. You'll make yours. I felt his breath close to my ear. Keep what you found. But keep it safe. As in, never speak of it again. He walked back to his chair, completely composed. Or, you can send it to someone. A journalist, perhaps. In which case, I'll make sure the world believes you were the one moving the money. I turned toward him. You're bluffing. He laughed softly. Oh, Ethan. I never bluff. I just prepare early. He opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the desk. Inside were screenshots of my files, my emails, my external transfers, even my USB backups. All recompiled, all time-stamped under my credentials. Proof, fabricated, but perfect. See, he said, almost kindly. You've already confessed. You just don't know it yet. I closed the folder slowly. Why tell me this? Because, he said, refilling his glass, I like you. You're careful. Precise. You remind me of myself 20 years ago. He raised the glass. Here's my advice, from one survivor to another. Learn when to stop digging. Truth isn't noble. It's expensive. And it rarely pays the bills. He took a slow sip, eyes never leaving mine. Go home, Ethan. Take a week off. Think about what kind of man you want to be, the one who survives, or the one who's remembered. I stood up. I don't want your advice. He smiled. Then take my warning. As I turned to leave, he added quietly, check your car before you drive tonight. I froze. When I looked back, he was already looking out the window again, the city lights reflected in his glass. The elevator ride down felt longer this time. Every floor number blinked slower, like descending through layers of silence. In the parking garage, I stopped beside my car. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. A small, black device under the rear bumper. A tracker. I pulled it off carefully and placed it on the ground. It blinked once, red, then went dark. I stood there for a long time, the sound of my heartbeat echoing louder than the engines around me. That night, I didn't go home. I drove to a cheap motel on the edge of the city, locked the door, and sat in the dark. Langford's voice echoed in my head. Truth isn't noble. It's expensive. He thought he'd scared me. Maybe he had. But fear was information. And information was leverage. I opened my laptop and started again. If the mentor wanted me to stop digging, it meant the real secret wasn't the money. It was why he'd stolen it. And I was going to find out. The message came at 10:37 p.m. A short, anonymous text. They're meeting tonight. Boardroom 11th floor. 11 p.m. No name. No number. But I didn't need one. There was only one they that mattered now. Arthur Langford and Adrian Clark, the CEO. The corporate tower at night is a strange thing. During the day, it breathes noise, footsteps, phones, printers, gossip. After midnight, it feels alive in a different way. The hum of air vents. The faint buzz of the city below. It listens. I parked 2 blocks away and entered through the delivery entrance with a stolen ID badge from an intern who'd left weeks ago. The halls were dark, the glass panels reflecting my silhouette back at me, like the building was making sure I remembered how small I was. When I reached the 11th floor, I could already hear them. Muffled voices. 2 men. I slipped into the adjacent server room, where a small ventilation grate overlooked the conference hall. Through the narrow slit, I saw them. The CEO, Adrian Clark, pacing beside the long glass table, his hands shaking slightly as he spoke. And Langford, calm as always, sitting at the head of the table like a priest hearing confession. "I can't authorize another transfer," the CEO said, voice strained. "The board will notice." Langford swirled a glass of whiskey. "The board notices what I tell them to notice," he replied. "You don't understand, Arthur. There's pressure from investors. They're asking questions about STG accounts." Langford smiled. "Then give them better questions." Clark slammed a folder onto the table. "Do you know what this is? An inquiry from the Financial Crimes Division. They're not some blogger we can silence. They're digging into you." Langford didn't flinch. "They're digging into us, Adrian. You approved the same transactions I did." The CEO's face went pale. "Because you told me to." "And you did it," Langford said softly. "Which means we're both very loyal, or very guilty. The difference is who controls the narrative." The CEO stepped back, breathing hard. "I'm done, Arthur. This ends now." Langford leaned forward, voice low. "No, Adrian. You don't end things. I do." Then he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small black folder, the kind used in confidential settlements. He opened it slowly. Inside were photographs. The CEO's wife. His daughter. A private villa in Monaco. Documents stamped offshore account transfers. Langford slid them across the table. "I'd hate for your family to learn that their house, and their school tuition, came from company funds." The CEO didn't move. Didn't blink. Langford's tone softened, almost fatherly. "You're not a bad man, Adrian. You're just a man who needed guidance. That's what I do. I guide people. I clean up their messes before someone else notices." For a moment, the room was silent except for the low hum of the air conditioning. Then the CEO whispered, "What do you want?" Langford leaned back. "Simple. One more authorization. Project Lyris." "I told you," Clark said, "there is no Project Lyris." "There is now." Langford handed him a single-page document. From my angle, I could only make out a few words: foreign consultancy, data transfer license, confidential. The CEO stared at it, trembling. "I can't sign this." Langford stood. "Then I'll find someone who can. But they won't call you CEO for long." He reached for his phone, dialed a number, and said, "Prepare the announcement draft. Clark's retiring early. Health reasons." Clark's shoulders sagged. He grabbed the pen. His signature shook like the hand of a man signing his own execution. I recorded everything, the audio, the documents, the timestamps, using a wireless mic I'd hidden in my tie clip. But the moment Clark finished signing, Langford looked up sharply. His gaze turned toward the ceiling vent, toward me. I froze. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he smiled. He knew. I crawled back silently, heart racing. Every step down the emergency stairwell echoed too loud, every sound a threat. By the time I reached the parking level, sweat had soaked through my shirt. My car was where I'd left it. The tracker I'd removed last night was gone, but in its place, a new one sat neatly on the windshield, as if to say, "Nice try." I got in anyway, started the engine, and drove until the tower was just a glimmer in the rearview mirror. At a red light, I played the recording. Langford's voice came through clean, crisp, undeniable. Every word could bury him. Every word could bury me too. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hunted. Back at the motel, I uploaded the audio to a secure cloud under an alias, splitting it into fragments across multiple accounts. If one got deleted, others would survive. I replayed Langford's words again and again. The difference is who controls the narrative. He wasn't afraid of exposure. He was building a story that would outlive the truth. And I realized I'd just become a character in his next one. At 2:11 a.m., a new email arrived in my encrypted inbox. No sender, no subject, no text. Just a single attachment, a photo. It was me, taken from across the street, sitting in this very room. I closed the laptop slowly, every instinct screaming at once. Langford didn't need to threaten me anymore. He was reminding me that he didn't need walls, cameras, or trackers to find me. He had people. And people were cheaper than silence. That night, as the rain began to fall outside, I whispered to myself, "You can't fight what you can't see." But I had one thing he didn't, the truth recorded in my hands. I just had to stay alive long enough to use it. I didn't leave the motel for 3 days. The curtains stayed closed. The air smelled like stale coffee and fear. Every time a car passed outside, I froze. Langford's photo, the one of me through the window, sat on the table like a mirror I couldn't look away from. He was letting me know he could see me whenever he wanted. But fear is a useful fuel. It sharpens you. So I used it. I started mapping everything I knew, transfers, shell accounts, invoices, missing funds, across a digital whiteboard that covered my entire laptop screen. Each account code, every project name, every consulting fee the company had paid in the last 2 years. At first it looked random, chaotic. But then, one pattern began to repeat, 3 to 5%. Every project over $10 million had a small, almost invisible reduction. Never enough to raise suspicion. Never enough to trigger an audit. That missing percentage always flowed into a short chain of holding accounts, Argus Holdings, Nova Crest, Sylvan Advisory, before disappearing into something called Lyris Infrastructure Group. Project Lyris. The same name Langford forced the CEO to sign off on during their midnight meeting. I dug deeper. Lyris wasn't a construction company, or a consultancy, or anything real. It was a ghost shell registered under Mentor Strategies LLC, headquartered in Luxembourg. A single contact email, info@mentorstrategies.co. A number with no voicemail. Langford had built a financial labyrinth, a loop that moved money in circles until it forgot where it came from. But it wasn't just our company. I cross-referenced payment partners and discovered transactions from 5 other corporations: healthcare, real estate, logistics, energy, even a charity fund. All funneled through the same pattern. All stamped with the same digital signature key, AL52LX, Langford's encrypted authorization code. He wasn't stealing from one company. He was running a private economy. At 2 a.m., I stepped away from the screen, my head spinning. 2 million had been a distraction. A test. The real number was closer to 400 million. And the strangest part, every transaction coincided with a major event: layoffs, acquisitions, sudden executive resignations. He wasn't taking money. He was engineering outcomes. Each theft triggered a reaction. A company weakened, a rival absorbed, a board replaced. Langford wasn't just a consultant. He was a puppeteer controlling the entire corporate ecosystem, 1 decimal at a time. I needed proof. Not digital traces, physical ones. Something no one could erase with a keystroke. So I went hunting offline. The old records archive sat beneath the main tower, level -2, a place no one visited anymore since everything went digital. I used the same stolen badge, layered with a copied access ID I'd pulled from a discarded employee email. The air was heavy with dust and silence. Rows of gray cabinets stretched into darkness, like tombstones. Somewhere among them was the trail Langford thought he'd buried. I found it under Corporate Advisory 2019 to 2023. Boxes filled with binders, receipts, signatures. Every major merger the company had done passed through external consultation, and everyone included Mentor Strategies as a third-party advisor. He had built a pipeline so clean, so legitimate, that even forensic accountants wouldn't question it. But one file stopped me cold. Inside, a printed invoice marked Lyris Infrastructure, Contract 12A. Approved by Arthur Langford. Countersigned by Adrian Clark. Attached, a handwritten note. Transfer to Sylvan Advisory before Q2 close. For discretion. Below it, in another hand, smaller, rushed, someone had written, "Stop this. It's illegal." The signature was faint, almost erased by water damage. But I recognized it. Daniel. He had tried to stop it. I took photos of every page, every signature, every mark. When I turned to leave, I noticed something strange. The lock on the archive door had been freshly oiled. Someone else had been down here recently. Then my phone buzzed. No number. Just a message. "You're predictable, Ethan." I froze. The fluorescent lights flickered. Another message. "Look up." I did. A small camera lens blinked red from the ceiling corner. I didn't think. I grabbed the box, killed the lights, and ran. Footsteps echoed from the far end of the hallway. Not rushed, steady, patient, like someone who already knew where I'd go. I slipped through the maintenance door, up 2 flights, and out through the service exit into the rain. The city air hit my face like cold electricity. I kept running until the tower disappeared behind the fog. Back at the motel, drenched and shaking, I spread the documents across the bed. Langford's system stared back at me, a perfect network of corruption spanning continents. He wasn't just stealing wealth. He was redistributing power. Each company he drained became dependent on him. Each CEO he compromised became his pawn. He was creating a corporate monarchy, with himself as the unseen king. At 4:23 a.m., my laptop beeped. A new email appeared in my encrypted inbox. Subject: "You've gone too far." Attachment: a single PDF. I opened it. Inside was a still image from the archive's security camera. Holding the files. Caption beneath it: "You're part of the story now." That was the moment I realized the theft wasn't the story at all. It was the distraction. The real operation was psychological, a test of control. Langford didn't steal money for greed. He stole it to measure obedience. He wanted to see who would notice, and who would stay silent. I stared at the documents on the bed, the rain pounding outside. He had built a perfect system. But every system has one flaw, its creator's pride. Langford believed he could own every narrative. So I would create one he couldn't. A story so loud it would drown his silence.
Part 2 is still on the channel. Please watch and follow.